In a world of busy bees and podcasts, oops, wrong script. During the recording of the following podcast, no Democrats, Republicans, actors, chemists, dogs, cats, well, you get the idea, were harmed. However, it has been said some have been offended by the opinions seen and heard here. Oh, and please remember to pull clips out of context.
Wait. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Logan.
Welcome to Shh, It Matters.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. We thought you were someone else.
It's so awful. There's no way to even begin to explain what's so awful about it.
Tell me more.
Where's the stuff?
Come on, put a little more into it than that.
This is Craig Uglin.
I'm going to take that clip now.
I bet you will. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Shh, It Matters.
Vice News says that Republicans are pissed off, turning out in huge numbers and on the march heading into the 2022 midterms as they seek to take back the House and Senate and a bevy of governorships and other offices around the country. Democrats should be terrified after last night's election results, they say. Democrats just took a shellacking in last night's elections in a warning sign of the stiff headwinds they face heading into the 2022 midterms. Republican Glenn Youngkin won Virginia's hotly contested gubernatorial election, the first time the GOP has won that governorship since 2009, in a part of a Republican sweep of the Commonwealth's statewide offices. New Jersey's gubernatorial race is still too close to call. Now it has been called. Murphy did take it, by the way, as a little bit of a sidebar. As you're hearing this, it did come out. When Democrats were confident they would win, and Republicans swept Pennsylvania's statewide judicial elections, including a victory for a Supreme Court seat in the key swing state. Blah, 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 wow, yippee-ki-yay, according to Bruce Willis.
Right. So it's interesting that a year ago, when I think everybody across the country knew that it was such a crucial election, probably the biggest election of our lifetimes, that all of the people that are magically appearing for this election didn't vote a year ago. And I'm not going down the conspiracy of, maybe I am, of the ballot fraud and all that stuff, but I mean, they have 30 or 40% increased turnout in Republican voting this year. Why wouldn't those people have voted last year?
There is certainly voter irregularity, as I have said.
Yeah.
That fraud is, I mean, is it really different? I don't know. But there's definitely things that don't add up.
Right.
And so I hear what you're saying there. But so then there should be an audit.
Right. And maybe this many people flipped. I don't know. But
I think people flipped for sure.
Right. But it'll be interesting to see the background to it.
Yeah. But I also in kind of off, I'm not off topic, but certainly not part of this article that we're discussing is I have spoke with, I guess you'd probably call them staunch Republicans. Like they've voted Republican their entire life. Mm-hmm. They're not going to not vote for Republican. And in the presidential election, they didn't vote Republican because of Trump.
Right.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of Trump haters on the Republican side of the aisle that said, we're not going to vote for this schmuck. And good writer in between, that's your decision. But what I'll say to that is, for me, you look at the policy.
Right.
You look at, okay, what is this? Is he for the Constitution of the United States and for the United States, which is people? Right. Or are you establishment and looking out for your pockets and all that kind of stuff? And as another piece of my rant, I want to say, I think that these elected officials should get paid a ton of money. And if there's one bit of corruption, they can't They can't invest unless they're out of Congress.
Right.
It's got to be this massive thing.
Transparency.
That
Complete transparency.
Right, complete. And we need to pay them very well as people.
So they're not tempted to take
Not only are they not tempted,
special
but
interest money.
Exactly. So that's my just opinion, and it's not. I said it very simply. It's not that simple. I get it, but I think that would be look. We're a big enough country that we have to have full-time politicians. I get that. It sucks how it started. It's not how they wanted it to be,
Right.
but I get it. We do have to have them at this point. It's certainly on the large state levels and things like that. Has to be full-time. It wasn't that way.
Right.
Up to
it
the
was supposed
Second
to be
World War.
2 or 4 year term, and
Well,
after your sessions, you went back to the
after
farm or back to your
sessions,
business.
yeah, exactly. You were in office essentially for like 6 months out of the year.
And that's how it is still in Minnesota at state level.
Yes. So it needs to get to that point where this is a public service.
Yes, it's not a career.
Yes.
It's a service to your community or your country.
Yes. And so I think then we would see a completely different thing. But that's kind of that's a lot off base. My point being of all of that stuff is this. When we see this election in Virginia, you have somebody coming out that is what's the lieutenant governor? What was her name?
Oh,
Winsome or Winston?
Yes, Winsome.
Winsome, yeah.
which is ironic.
Yeah, it is. She is the first, is it black lady or to hold a statewide office in Virginia?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think that was, please fact check.
Yeah.
So, these are, and she's a Republican, and she, some of her campaign photos are of her holding some sort of a gun, because she was in the military, a rifle.
She's an immigrant.
She's a Jamaican immigrant.
Yes.
Yes, at 6
But
years
served
old.
in our military.
And served in our military, and all these things. This is huge. Here's the point of this. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat and that's who you voted for your entire life. We in the United States of America have a constitution that is for the people, by the people, and of the people. And that...
I've heard that before.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I didn't come up with it. It's not weird that... Wait. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Somebody a couple hundred years ago, a couple guys.
And so... I don't care about Trump's stupid tweets, and they were stupid, and I don't care about whatever's. If you're stepping up to the plate as my public servant, you better have an open ear, an open mind, and do things according to the Constitution.
Wait, you mean you're supposed to be responsible to your constituents and respond to your constituents?
No. You're supposed to censor them, shut them down, tell them that they're wrong, all those other things.
So you don't have to return emails and phone calls?
No, you just ignore them. And if they show up and want to talk, you just shut them down. And not only that, I mean, I suppose you could do what they did in Pennsylvania, and they edited the public videos and cut things out and posted them on their public, You could do that probably too. That's probably what you should do.
So I have a master's. Do you have a master's or a doctorate in sarcasm? Because we're laying it on pretty darn thick.
It's a PhD in both, of a doctorate and a master's.
Okay, just checking. Some people may not be able to sniff out the BS.
Well, it's not BS. It's sarcastic. But this is big, I think, for a lot of reasons. They're not talking about small margins here. They're talking about pretty significant margins. They're not talking about just conservative quote areas. Obviously they were big and influential, but they're talking about all across the board here. Youngskin, he and Winsome, they they won. This isn't a question.
Right. And they're already the left there, and I don't recall what it was, but they're already going after him for being, a wolf in sheep's clothing and da 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 da.
Oh, white
It's like,
supremacist,
oh my gosh,
all
on.
these things. Yeah, I know.
Cancel culture already, and he hasn't even been sworn in yet.
Right.
And I'm sure Winsome will be touted as an NRA gun nut because she had a picture with a black, mean-looking rifle that some call an assault rifle. Yet she's a military veteran, so whatever. Just cancel away because you didn't get what you wanted.
Yeah, but that shows a lot of the attitude too. That's pretty scary. I think even for maybe the Democratic Party is that they're seeing this attitude of these. You talk about sheep in
Wolf in sheep's clothing.
Wolf in sheep clothing. Wow, I totally lost it there. Wolf in sheep clothing.
I'll feed you, baby bird.
Thank you. They are. They're the ones. They're projecting. Right, they're the ones that are doing that. They're saying that, we're going to come and do this and that, and then just look at the Biden administration in the 9 months he's been in office. No mandates. We're not going to mandate. We're going to, we encourage people. Blah blah blah. And now you're going to get fired if you don't get the jab. So talk about
our heroes are zeros.
It's insane.
And if you don't do it, we're going to shame you into it. Or bribe you into it, or whatever. Or cancel you because you don't.
Yes. And that is not any way to run a society like the United States, where we have a constitution.
It's disgusting. And if you don't take the poke, you're an anti-vaxxer. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I don't believe in that poke. That doesn't make me an anti. We've had this conversation many times. But it's, if you don't do what we say, well, then we're going to pigeonhole you with all these bad people. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's talk about it. I understand where you're coming from. You're very loud about it, but the opposing side won't listen to anybody that has a different thought.
Yeah, and now it's you got to get 3 pokes, 4 for some. Immunocompromised people is 4. And
now they're pushing kids, and they're probably going to mandate kids when I have 4 children. 4 people under the age of 25 in Minnesota have died from COVID. 4. Horrible situation if it's one of your family members or whatever. Horrible. But then we can go down that Scott Jensen path. Did they have other extenuating circumstances? Were they completely healthy people that their sole cause of death is COVID?
The problem with people and the problem with that mindset that you just have, and I'm going to push on you a little bit with that, none of us are healthy.
Well, I'm living proof of that.
None of us are normal, right? I mean, there's sort of a normal for sure, but we each, the really crappy part is, the reality is all of us are going to die.
I don't know.
It's true.
You sure?
I'm positive.
All right. Take your word for it.
And the thing, that is not in our control.
No.
How we live is in our control.
Quality of life.
Sort of. Depends upon who you ask.
True.
Should be. And so it's excruciatingly painful for these children and their their families, their brothers or sisters, or moms or dads, grandparents. It's terrible. I lost a daughter tragically.
Yep.
I know that pain, and I also know that it happens, and none of us, we were born to die. And I don't want to be super morbid about that, but that is the reality, and that is super hard. And I've seen way too many things I should not have seen, and the reason I say this is we have to protect how we live. We have to protect how the other people in our lives live. We have to allow them to make the choice for themselves and for their families, because we get one freaking shot at it.
Yep.
And that is it.
Yep.
And I don't know how we got off on this particular point, but I think
That's all right.
I think how we did is that it's people are starting to vote for the Constitution again and for that freedom.
Right. Freedom of speech, freedom of medical choice, freedom to live life the way they want to live.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me what I have to do to myself.
Right.
Let me make that decision. And then to guilt people, well, you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for other people. I don't owe you anything. I'm doing what's best for me. When it comes down to it, I'm doing what I feel is best for me.
Yes. And the problem with the problem is not the jab. It's good for a lot of people. Scott Jensen even has said, who you mentioned, has said it's good for certain people. For sure.
Absolutely.
But to be mandated across the board for people who have already had COVID, who are have an immunity built up to it already, does not make any sense.
No.
And all those things. And I agree with that. And to take away that little piece, and I say little, and it's because that's how they're portraying it. It's just this little thing.
This little poke.
It doesn't end there, people. It doesn't end there.
It's just the start. And I don't think either of us are conspiracy theorists, but we're not shutting that door on the what ifs of maybe there is some truth to that. Maybe there's a little ounce of truth to everything. Take everything at face value. There usually is.
Yeah. You can track the money and the
look at the Moderna stocks. They crashed when they got one of the vaccines pulled out of their portfolio.
Yeah, you can and the people that are making up the mandates are the ones who have the most to gain.
The vested interest. It's interesting. So I
don't know. We got way off on
how much time we got left? Do we have a few minutes left?
A couple, I guess.
Okay. So I am not a huge fan of Russell Brand, but I've been watching some of his podcasts on YouTube the last few weeks, and he's not left, he's not right. He calls it like he sees it. He doesn't have a vested interest. I don't think he's a U.S. citizen, but regardless, he was talking about the corruption and the insider trading and whatnot in D.C., and it was to the point where they had people watching Nancy Pelosi. And there's a guy out in California that was watching Nancy Pelosi and everything that she was trading in and out of. And there's rules. They have to report, anybody in Congress, I believe, has to report within 45 days everything that they buy and sell.
There's an app or something you can
exactly
follow. Yeah.
There's a guy that made an app that you can download, and it will show you what Nancy Pelosi does so that you can follow that and make a ton of money because insider trading.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's scary. It's kind of funny. It's probably pretty smart. Follow the money.
Yeah, you got to follow the money. And that's why I said, you got to pay them really well, but they can't do that while they're in office.
Take that temptation away.
Yep.
They should not come out of office as millionaires when they go in with $100,000 to the name and
Biden
come out
has never held a private job.
And he's a millionaire. Multi-millionaire. Same with Obama. Come out small. And I'm sorry, the book deals aren't. It's not the book deals that are doing that. So,
anyway.
I digress.
This from Vice News is definitely a very powerful article because they do not want to appear to show a weakness in the Democratic Party, and they're showing a weakness in whether you call it weakness or just this is reality. And there's a lot of people that are saying enough's enough, and we're going to vote in people who are for the people, by the people, and of the people, because guess what? There's more people than there are establishment.
Let's hope so.
I think there is. They've got a lot of power, but
it'll be very interesting to see what happens in 2022. Locally, regionally, nationally. I think the people that are on the extreme left and the extreme right need to be very careful on
Yes.
what they do. They need to start listening to that 90% in the broad middle. They
Yeah.
need to start listening to their constituents.
And it is 90%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you only hear about that 1 or 2% on each end. And it's both ends.
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely,
locally, regionally, there's people on both ends that are going to destroy their parties.
Yep.
Because in everything they say, there might be an ounce or two of truth, but then they just go off the deep end. And they're ruining their cause because they just can't rationalize the legitimacy of what they're, or the illegitimacy of what they're trying to
I think
spew.
what happens for those extreme cases, left and right, for a moron like myself and the way I see it, is that they won't compromise. There's certain things I won't compromise on
Exactly.
at all, period.
Yep.
And I won't compromise on certain things. It's extreme to say that, I get it, but there are certain things, and I've had conversations with each of my kids, like this is, I won't compromise, I'll always
Right.
love you type thing, you know.
Yep.
And I just say
But-
that not as a specific, but as a generality. But there's a lot of things in life that you do have to compromise in a society. In your own home, probably not. In your own business, probably
Depends
not.
on how happy you want your house to be.
Right. I mean, it depends upon how big of an a-hole you are. I mean, if you're a big a-hole like me, you probably want to compromise a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Depends on what you want.
you know, you asked my daughter some hard questions. She gave you honest answers, right?
that's
I mean,
pretty fun.
on the podcast live, you know,
Yep.
and I'm okay with that. That's I understand who I am. I understand the decisions I've made, all those things, and not all of them have been good, but not all of them been bad. And that's what you have to realize, is that compromise, and that there's not a solid line on a lot of these things, because there are people who have a viewpoint that's different than yours. Whether you're on
And that's not a bad thing.
that's not a bad thing. Whether you're on the right or the left, and what the wisdom of the people who wrote the Constitution, imperfect as they were,
It's a pretty bomb-proof document.
It's a pretty solid.
Yeah. And it has been adjusted. There have been amendments. Abolition of slavery. That was a great thing.
It's interesting
I mean,
to read about some of that in their private journals. I've read some of the things. It's been years now, but a lot of them did not want. They wanted slavery abolished then.
It was the compromise they had to make.
They had to make.
And they had slaves themselves, but their
you
slaves
also,
compared to the southern slaves were treated completely different.
right, the thing also that you have
Doesn't
to
make it
realize.
right, but-
No, right. The other thing you have to realize too is, like, you know, they don't call some of the stuff that's happening around the world slavery today. It is.
Go to the Middle East.
And it's worse, right? And it's
What do you
worse,
think? What do you think has built Dubai?
right? And it's worse than what it was here.
Yeah.
You know, and the only difference between speaking out against that in Dubai or in China or whatever is, you get to do that here because we have a constitution.
Right.
And now you want to destroy the constitution.
Right.
And that's going to mean slavery is going to be worse. That's the point of that.
Right. It's
So
overall
you have to
damn good
compromise.
document.
Right or left, you have to compromise. You don't have to compromise the Constitution, but you have to compromise some of those white spaces in between the black letters.
It's pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's deep. It's a good, interesting conversation.
Yeah, always. Craig, I appreciate you having those conversations where I can lean in on you and say,
I
I
want
don't
you to
agree.
lean in.
I don't agree with you sometimes.
Hold my feet to the
You
fire.
know, and that doesn't mean that that you're disagreeable or I'm disagreeable. It means that we have a different viewpoint, and that's super important.
But we can still share dialogue.
Yep. And you know, that's where it's at.
I want you to hold my feet to the fire.
And you do
make
the
me
same.
accountable for the stuff that comes out of my mouth. Just don't take sound bites out of context.
Right. People do.
Yeah, that's part
You're
of
never gonna
part of
stop.
life, apparently.
You're never going to stop that if you do this.
No,
It's
just hold up in the.
which is exactly the point. Those are the extremes that won't sit down and have the conversations with you, and that's on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for just digging in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'll see you later, huh? I'll give you a call.
Hammer the share button. Go ahead and hammer out a comment to us. Go ahead and hammer the like button. Go ahead and hammer the subscription button. Go ahead and hammer the notification bell so that when we have new content up, you're the first to know about it. We really appreciate the comments, shares, likes, because you know what? That's the best way you can support us, because the algorithms on all these fancy computers, that's what they need. We appreciate it.